Hello there. I'm Ken Reed, president of North Sales and your host for Loft 57, the North Sales podcast that features people in our industry and in our sport who help design, build, use, and service the products that we produce. The rise of offshore extreme distance sailing and racing is quite dramatic. People in boats pushing to the limits never imagined in the past, the speed, the violence of life on board, and the absolute pounding that the equipment and the people take. How do we know all this? Another modern invention has shown us the real view of life at the extreme, the drone. Launched from race boats, frequently in some conditions the sailing world could never imagine. Yes, a few of us at North Sales have lived these conditions before, but it's still a major eye-opener to sit back in the warmth of our living rooms and watch as our products are punished and pushed to limits that no computer model could ever imagine. So we've decided to talk about this further, to bring in two guests who've lived the punishment firsthand many times over, with each bringing a shared yet unique perspective of a phenomenon we can clearly call sail abuse. So first about our guest, Bouwe Bekking. Well, you don't have to say much more than that. One of the most experienced offshore ocean racers in the game, Bouwe sailed, I believe, 8 Whitbread and Volvo Ocean Races. We'll ask him that specifically here in a minute. He's been at the helm and in charge of programs such as Movie Star, Telefonica, and most recently, Brunel Ocean Racing. His experiences clearly earned him the title of Volvo Ocean Race legend, and he was on board the Volvo Ocean 65 Brunel when they were videoed by drone careening down massive waves, foot on the pedal in 40 knots of wind in the Southern Ocean leg of the last Volvo Ocean Race. Maybe some of the most dramatic sailing footage ever. Well, that comes to life in a phenomenal job of drone driving by onboard reporter Jan Roo. Our second guest is Nathan Quirk. Nathan is a master sailmaker by trade. He's participated in 4 Volvo Ocean races, twice with teams, and twice as the head of the Sail Loft, or the traveling boatyard. He's also been on-land sailmaker for 2 America's Cups, not counting the upcoming event where he's going to be with the Alinghi team. Our questions to him will revolve around the sails and how repairs have changed through the evolution of sail types. How has sail repair changed? The teams like Bouwe's Brunel clearly tried to wreck their sails, and it's Nathan's job to make sure they stayed in one piece, and if there was a problem, how to fix them on board. A really unique perspective. Guys, thank you both so much for being here. We really look forward to getting your perspective on everything offshore sailing.
Thanks, Ken. Good to be here.
Good day, Ken. Good day, Nathan. Good to see you guys, and happy to give a little bit of perspective what I've experienced in the past.
All right, Bouwe, let's start with you first. Your first ocean race, I believe, was 1985-86, the Whitbread on Phillips Innovator.
It's a long time ago, but
it is a long time ago. So give us a quick view of life on board Phillips Innovator versus the modern ocean race experience aboard the 65s that you've been sailing the last couple of times.
Yeah, I think there is just thousands of differences between my first one and the last one. I think, first of all, the boats, we sailed IOR in the old days on a handicap system. And I was sailing on an aluminum boat. And there was a captain's cabin, there was a big table and a saloon. We had a chef on board, so a cook. And of course, we had sails, and mainly deck front sails. We had a couple of Kevlar sails, but on the tough legs in the Southern Ocean, we stuck to the deck front sails. And I think a big thing as well was it was my first one, and you don't know how cold it gets in the Southern Ocean. So I did a leg just with leather boots, which wasn't that smart. So I actually got frostbite when we arrived in Auckland. Of course, the last editions, the sails have been just superb. They've been way different than we had on the first one. But I think the biggest thing is just the boats are going so much faster. On my first round the world race, we had an epic day. We did 304 miles because 4 years before, Connie van Rietschoten with Flyer did 314. So we were very close breaking it with a 63-footer. But we just thought we were hauling the mail. And now in the last edition, we know that AXO just did over 600. I think we had 598. That's nearly double the distance. So that says something about just the maintaining of the speed.
Well, with this evolution of boats, speeds, sails, let's just go forward. So we started with Dacron, went into Kevlar paneled sails, and then into 3DL, let's just call them plastic sails used offshore. I think 2008 maybe was the last time the plastic sails were used offshore. Tell us a little bit about trying to prepare a race using sails that you kind of have a feeling are going to fall apart versus the different mentality of trying to deal with 3DI now. How does the strategy, the ability to push the boat, the planning, the sail consumption, it's complicated, isn't it?
Well, I think it is bloody complicated. And as well, because it was a development class, so there was no restrictions and limitations on the amounts of sails what you had, and as well the sizes. So we were going through a lot of sails. And of course, the preparation time is always minimal. So actually, I think before the race, you're not putting the sails through the conditions where you're actually going racing, because the time was just too short. So once we were racing, we had probably more issues than we ever expected. And I think the product was nice. The shapes were really good. But I think Nathan remembered with Telefonica Blue, because I think that was the last one where we sailed actually with the 3D that we had in the Southern Ocean, and the holes just kept falling in the sails. The shape was still there, but the mylar just started disappearing. And I'm not sure what it was, but I mainly expected was the flogging and just that the bonding wasn't good enough. So we have been spewing a lot about these sails, but like what I said, it was the best at that stage what you could get. And yeah, we just put it through hell, and they didn't last as long as we were hoping for.
Fast forward to 3DI, things have changed, huh?
It's unbelievable how the sails just survived. And I think Nathan with his team on the floor, they saw the footage, and they probably came into a stopover and said, okay, now we're going to work 24/7 for 14 days. And he can better tell that story later. But just the wear and tear on the 3DIs was just fantastic. We didn't have a single sail where we got a hole, and so we didn't have any repairs. Of course, there was some work on the leeches to be done, but just the sails and the flogging what they sometimes had. I can tell you one episode of sailing in the Southern Ocean after the big footage what we had was like 2 or 3 days in 40, 45 knots of breeze. And Kenny, you know, when there's a big cloud coming behind you, what do? Do you furl up or do you keep going? And we had a couple of squalls going 45, close to 48 knots. And then there was one coming and we said, we're going to ride this one out as well. And all of a sudden we had 60 knots on the dial. And of course, we lost it. So we broached, luckily the right way. And the sail was flogging in the fractional zero, was flogging in 60 knots of breeze. We got it furled up, and to our surprise afterwards, when we started unfurling again in 40 knots, the sail was still completely intact. Just the leech tape had a little damage on it, and that was it. We're pushing the boats all the time. So when normal family is sailing with their boat, they probably reef in time, and they should reef in time. But we're always trying to push, put a bigger sail up, keep unreefed as long as possible, because it's just faster. And I think if you had a flogometer on the sails in the Volvo Ocean Race, now in the Ocean Race, I think it would be amazing to see so many hours the sails have been flapping and are still in one piece. And I think that's the most remarkable thing about it. And not to forget about the shape, because we sailed last year around Europe, and actually this year, again, I sailed with the Polish team, the old Mafra. We did the Heineken Regatta. And still, if you look at these sails, and that is just the main sail, who went halfway around the world, plus then all the sailing afterwards. I think it was close to 180 days of sailing, what they did afterwards. And the shape is still remarkable. Well, that boat was third overall in the RRC 600 with that sails. So it just says something that the sails are still performing even after probably close to 80, 90,000 miles.
All right. On a side note, you were referencing your Southern Ocean, the few famous days that the drone footage caught. I think you mentioned to me earlier that it happened early in the morning and it was kind of an idea like, hey, let's give a run at this. Let's try to launch a drone. And Jan Roo is as good in the business as anybody in the world at telling the story through video. But how the heck did these guys launch, record, and get it back in again? I mean, the conditions were ridiculous, obviously, but I think even more amazing was getting the drone back on board and actually retrieving that tape.
Well, people just have to remember, of course, downstairs it's dry, but these drones, they're not made for water. It's just very simple. Electronics and water just doesn't cope very well with each other. So it was, first of all, getting out of the hatch, going to the back of the boat because there was all kind of talks we can launch it out of the hatch. But of course, then you have a boom and you've got a lot of things around you. Speaking about that launching, because later during the race, the guys all the onboard reporters became way better, and they actually started launching out of the hatch because it just saved them a trip to the back of the boat. There was a big plastic bag around. It was the only way to keep it dry. And then, of course, you have to get it in the air. But the same thing is for getting it back on board. Of course, that was a crime as well because the boat is moving and the helmsman is, of course, not taking in account that the drone has to come on board because he wants to go as fast as possible. And you will just see the moment when the drone comes in, you're leaping it in a big wave in front of you and it's all white water on the deck. So you think you can catch the drone, and then Jan, in this case, had to let the drone fly up again just to stay dry. So it was quite a bit of action, but it's amazing what these guys have done during the last race.
You're a perfectionist, I think, as most great sailors are. And you've always been really sometimes brutally honest with feedback to North Sails, working with designers, working with sales and service reps, working with folks like Nathan. Can you explain your process of going through that? Because I think more, especially in the professional side of the sailing world, I think more people don't realize that there's North expertise available to make a better product for a specific program, and how you've kind of developed that relationship over the years.
And that's, I think, as well how I approach it with Norse, because nobody is perfect. And especially if you have a new product, sometimes there are happening mistakes. If you have ideas, I was never shy to say, okay, we don't give it a go. Because if you think you have an advantage as a yachty, then of course you're trying to get that. And the sails, we still know it's the motor of your sailing boat. So if I had ideas, we were trying it. And Norse was very open-minded with all the designers they actually have, because in the big picture as well, you can say, there's other clients, they get the benefits. And I think that's been the really case with North Sails. But the Volvo Ocean Race has been great, because if you think about the old days, the Code Zeros, the first developments came, I think it was in 2001 or 2002 or 97 even, when the first Code Zeros came out.
Yep.
Just see how far that has come. So I think a lot of people have benefited over the years from developments that have been made. And of course, Norse has been always great about it, but of course you can't keep things for yourself. You are a development company as well.
So the evolution continues. And I love what you say about nobody's ever perfect. You can always do something better. I and our company, I think 100% agrees.
Let me just put another example with the Swan 50 with the one design, where Norse was just the leading class and most of the boats having Norse sails. And then last year I was sailing on a boat and say, okay, the structured Loft came in and I said, okay, let's just give it a go. And we were the only boat who had it. And it's a big risk in a way, because you have to cart sails. But as well, we had a great owner who just bought us a training set so we could actually have a look at it, develop them, get a feel how the boat speed was. And now that season we sailed with the structured Loft jibs. And it was fantastic. And the sails have done very well. I know they were racing 3 weeks ago. They chartered the boat out. They were using the practice sails from previous season not to lose any carts. So it is just, you have to keep trying. And of course, sometimes you have to take a risk. And sometimes it can go wrong as well. I have to be very honest. And that I have to put my hand up and tell to the owner or to a sponsor, was maybe not such a good idea, but at least we gave it a go.
Yep. Helix has certainly taken over many, many different aspects of the sport right now. And I think it's just starting. I think it's going to continue. One final thing. After the last race, I actually got some notes and calls from some of the pros saying the sails are too strong. And I think when pros says sails are too strong, they mean they're unbelievably strong, but that must mean that they're too heavy because they just never broke during the last race. So what do you say to that? Where is that trade-off between weight versus strength and durability?
Well, it must have been somebody who did his first race and never had any breakages.
Exactly.
We've all been there. And I think that was one of the great things, not only about the sails, but also about the boats. As a skipper, you don't have to worry that much. You just know everything stays in one piece. You know from yourself, sometimes you're coming in situations in the past where you just said, did we push too hard? Or was the material not good enough? And then you have to start arguing with either with the manufacturers or with your own team members. So I think in that sense, I don't agree with the sailors who said that. I think it was the perfect match.
Perfect. Bauer, thank you very much. Nathan, let's move over to you for a few minutes and have a slightly different perspective on this whole thing. You've been doing this for a while now, multiple around the world races as, I guess, quote, an expert sailmaker. Can you tell us just your workload? So just for people out there who may not realize, especially these brutal races can be in one or two fashions. One is just a continuous around the world race, but Bauer and myself and Nathan have been probably more involved with kind of the Volvo Ocean Race of the cadence of leg, stop, leg, stop, leg, stop. You build sails for a specific leg and then you stop and you put them back together again. But can you give us a feel for the workload between the old days of, well, I don't know how far back you went, tri-radial Kevlar sails, the plastic string sails, and now versus 3DI?
My first race was with Bauer with Telefonica Blue and Black. And that, like we said before, that was the last race with string sails. And I think just thinking about the last couple of weeks when I knew I was going to do this and thinking back, it was an especially tough race for sails. The performance of the boats had stepped up. The teams were pushing harder. The rigs had got better. The rigging's got better. The control lines have got better. But I think sail technology kind of plateaued there with the string sails, and they sort of became the fuse. No rigs came down in that race, but plenty of sail damage. And it was a battle just keeping the gear in one piece, let alone thinking about performance and how to improve your boat for the next leg and optimize it for the leg coming up and things like that. When the boat stopped, when the leg finished, 80% of your work list was just putting things back together, trying to get back to zero when you left 5,000 miles before. And then you get everything back in one piece and then think about developing and maybe recuts or whatever. One example, which I used quite a bit, was when we got to India in that race. Across the two teams, we had 6 sails that were terminally broken, not able to be used again without major repairs. And every other sail had some sort of damage. And you're in India, you can't just call Bainbridge and get a roll of sticky back or repair cloth. You're sort of on your own there. And we had 2 weeks non-stop with a sail loft open. We got 2 extra sailmakers in. So we had a total of 6 sailmakers working for one team. We were working 24 hours the loft was open 24 hours for 7 to 10 days. If you wind that all the way forward to the last Volvo race, we had 3 full-time sailmakers for the whole fleet and some extra help that came in during the maintenance period from North Sails. So, huge contrast. Where it's come from and where it's at now in just 10 years is amazing.
So you must have been a pretty happy guy when all of a sudden 3DI came around. And did you know right away that this was going to be a game changer, or how long did it take to figure out, wow, this is different?
I guess the race after was still in the Volvo 70s, and Volvo would cut the sail limits quite a bit from like 24 that you could use during the race down to 18. And they'd reduced it from 3 mains down to 2 mains. And after the experience we just had with the 70s in 2008-9, we were all wondering, how are we going to do this? This is not going to work. The math doesn't work. Also, at the same time, they're making the race longer. We were spending more time in the tropics. We had all these variables that were working against us. But that race, I think, certainly us at Group MR, we went all in on 3DI quite early and produced our first main, I think, middle of 2010. And I'm pretty sure the other teams that had started by 2010 had gone all in on it too. And I think by the time the race started, we were much better position than we were for the previous race. We were leaning on sails quite hard. We were doing some really proper testing in the Bay of Biscay and trying to break sails, because certainly from my side, that was a bit of an Achilles heel. The race before, watching the boat turn down every time there was a sail failure was pretty frustrating to watch. So it moved it on. We didn't have a single sail failure at Group MR in that race. So just in those 3 years between cycles, it was a huge gain. And that's only evolved into something that was to the standard where we could actually do the One Design project in the last 2 races.
Let's fast forward to what I was just talking to Bauer about, and that's the infamous drone footage that went crazy viral as soon as the world got to see it off the boat. When you see stuff like that as the sailmaker, as the person that has to put all this stuff back together again, potentially, does it make you cringe? Are you confident? Translate to us when you saw that footage that one day, holy smokes, or I kind of knew that's what happened out there.
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive footage. No one had seen anything like that before, and not since, really. No one's been down there since. by that stage, I guess we had a lot of confidence in the equipment, but you also know that in those conditions, those extreme conditions, anything can happen, like, wipeout, Chinese jibe. And that's when you start to see problems. And we had a pretty good comms with not direct comms, but we were always in touch with the duty officers at Volvo. And so we had a pretty good idea of what damage was on the boats before they arrived at stopovers. And one thing to consider on that leg too, traditionally most teams don't put their new sails on until they get to Brazil. So you have to think when we left New Zealand, those sails already had close to 15,000 miles on them, probably 15, 20,000 miles on them. So by ocean race standards, they were already getting quite old, but still there was no failures on that leg. And the example Bouwe used when they had that wipeout and the throw was stuck up, I remember Kyle, I think, came to the Loft and said, give it a good check, because it sounded like a shopping bag blowing in the wind and there's probably not much of it left. And so we were like, okay, this is probably this is a job on here. But so it was one of the first sails we checked because of that. And we were surprised when we pulled it out. It had a lot of little cuts in it, like vertical cuts, but nothing across the load path. And as Bouwe said, they were still able to use the sail. So the fact that this stuff, the 3DI, doesn't just explode and you're always able to somehow get it furled again is a major plus. Because in the past, I think if not being able to furl a sail, that's when it's just stuck up, or if it fails, it's stuck up, you can't furl it, it ends up in the water, and the damage just propagates to a point where you used to end up with just a ball of fiber in some cases, and that's impossible to fix.
On board the boats, and this isn't just for racers, but this is for cruisers as well, everybody's got a sail repair kit. There are just sometimes that turnbuckle, cotter pin is opened, that it is a soft good at the end of the day. But take us on board these racing machines. And the first Volvo I did, we carried a sewing machine all the way around the world with us. That was in the days of plastic 3DL sails. And also we still had soft spinnakers then. We had polyester nylon spinnakers. So we were putting sails back together. I wouldn't say frequently, but reasonably frequently. When the sewing machine came into action, are they even carrying sewing machines now? And just take us through we got a little cut in the sail. We want to keep using it. Take us through a sail repair with these modern materials.
That's right. We used to all take sewing machines. There was like a 40-kilo dead weight in the bilge. We weren't allowed to stack it. So no one really was that keen to take it, but it was a necessary evil kind of thing. By the middle of the 2011-12 race, I think we were in China, someone raised it, I think it was Frank, raised a question. He said, do we need to take this lump of lead in the bottom of the boat? We're not fixing sails anymore. And we were like, oh, well, we ended up taking it off and we never put it on. And I don't know where the other teams got. By the end of that race, I doubt anyone was taking a sewing machine. But in replace of that, we could stock the sail repair kit better with certain adhesives. We use the Loctite for bigger repairs when you have an opportunity to pull the sail out and it's dry. But there are 5200, 3M 5200 is another good adhesive we can use. And the good thing about 3DI too, like I said, with reference to the Fro on Brunel, if you get a cut, it doesn't propagate as much due to all the off-axis fibers. It usually catches. As soon as it runs into an off-axis fiber, it'll be contained and it won't sort of keep going to the edge of the sail where you definitely have problems. So you have a bit more time to catch it and we'll keep sailing, but also think about a repair, prepare a repair properly using the adhesives. And 3DI, Norths have a great product called 3DI 5-ply, which is a repair material with 5 layers of 3DI filaments in different directions. So it'll fix 90% of repairs you have to do on the water with suitable adhesives.
A little glue and a little Band-Aid and off you go. There's a dry time in there. I remember always hearing 24 hours, especially for some of the glues that we use. And I also remember pulling the sail back up in about 12 and just declaring that we aren't very good at timing.
Yeah, the longer you leave it, the better it is. But usually the best way is to repair it with a 5-ply and then put an adhesive over the top. So you're not going to peel the repair. Most of the glues are very good with shear. They're not amazing with peel. So if you can stop the peel by placing an adhesive scrim over the top of it, most of the way there after probably 5 or 6 hours, you're fine. Some of these teams have repaired these sails without even, if a spreader, say masthead 0 hits the end of a spreader and when it's just flopping around in no wind and it punches it, in some cases they won't drop that sail to repair. They'll send someone up with a patch and repair up the rig, and that's usually good enough because it's not nowhere near an edge.
I remember that well. So final question. We were talking to Bouwe. You guys are so invaluable to how sales evolve. And I remember a few conversations after the first Volvo Ocean 65s, the one design boats, into the second time that those boats were used. You were around for both of those times. I remember conversations with you. Hey, let's tweak this. Let's change that. Explain to us how that comes about. How does this evolution happen? And then I can explain how, well, sorry, we're not keeping it there. We actually use it in people's sales all over the world that after we find out better ways to do it.
The sail, we didn't change. Well, we did. We added a sail in the inventory between the two one design races, and we removed the non-woven. So I was actually a bit nervous about all that. So we reduced the weight of the sails quite a bit. Not as much as the non-woven because we added back structural fibers. So we had a good baseline from the race before. The rig didn't change. Nothing much changed with the boat. So it was all just about tweaking, some of the geometries. The J2 and J3 we shortened the luff of and changed the luff curve of the main a bit. Those one design races, being it's supplied equipment, we were slightly conservative and had to build in some contingency in the finishing. Obviously, when you're with a team, you accept a lot more risk if it's going to equal performance, normal risk reward. But with the one design, you're supplying sails to a pretty educated group of sailors and no one misses anything. You can't bluff your way through.
Nathan, thank you very much. Thanks for your insight. Final couple questions, fellas. Bouwe, first of all, you're doing a lot of sailing these days, inshore, offshore. We never did clarify. Has it been 8 times around?
Not 8 times completely, because one I did partially with merit, and one I didn't make the finish because the boat sank.
Oh, that's a fair point. I forgot about that. That was my second leg ever. So you showed all of us how hard this can be. All right. So let's call it, this potentially is your 9th attempt at a lap of the planet. Or are you going to go again?
Well, so far, I haven't found the funding and I haven't been called up. So everybody knows I love this race, but it's one of these things now because the race is very late in the season. It's basically starting in January, and then the stopovers are not too long. There's 2 long stopovers, but for the rest, it's all pretty short.
And Nathan, you are getting back into the America's Cup arena with the Lingy, foiling monohulls, twin skin mainsails. What are your expectations here? What do you know about the sails on these boats and how hard it's going to be to keep them in one piece and also continue to develop?
I was with Ineos the last time, so that was a good learning experience and quite a scramble at the end to get us on track. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, I had a 10-year break from the Cup when they went to wings, and unfortunately for me now, we've sort of got 2 mainsails up on the boat every day. So it's kind of worked out okay, and sort of sails are back in focus. Yeah, but it's going to be interesting. I think there's a lot to be gained in the aero side of things next Cup, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. An insight into the world that few of us have really dared to enter, although it seems like more and more races are stepping out into the rarefied air of mid-ocean sailing and brutal conditions. The speed of many modern boats, whether racing or cruising, and their ability to position themselves in fairly well-defined weather systems, well, it's created opportunities for suppliers like North Sails to anticipate, in many cases, a different philosophy of ocean sailing. And the expertise and evolution being pushed by people like Bouwe and Nathan, well, it just simply continues to push our products. I say all the time that we're lucky to have 3DI on our team. It allows sailors and sailmakers the ability to sleep at night, knowing that a sail that goes up is very likely going to come down in one piece and be fast for its condition, again, whether racing or cruising or trying to outrun bad weather. Nothing is ever perfectly planned in the ocean, which is why for the first time in history of sailmaking with 3DI, we're able to engineer the strongest and lightest sails in the world to take the abuse, whether anticipated or not. Once again, thank you for joining our Loft 57 chat, and join us next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world of sailing as seen through the lens of North Sails. I'm Ken Reed, president of North Sails. Thanks for listening, as I hope this is interesting and educational. So sail fast and talk soon. And remember, subscribe to Loft 57 podcast via Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And as always, connect with the North Sails community on Facebook and Instagram. Loft 57 is a North Sails production.